second after we do this. So we just went live. So here we are, July 15th, another show.
Golf course?
No, I'm not at the golf course. I'm just at the Airbnb right now. I will be at the golf course later. Played a nice round yesterday and then went to Dad's for dinner. We picked up sushi from Sushi Den. It was a good night. Had some scotch, talked about the market a little, and let's dive into it. I mean, yesterday I wasn't glued in because I was golfing, but at the morning it looked like the market was going to be another sell-off and had some sort of midday turnaround, and then the buyers stepped in, turned into a nice rally, really got back a lot of the losses from Monday, and then the Moderna news came out, Trump giving a press conference, and I didn't know what was causing the futures to get jacked up. All of a sudden, 5 p.m., the futures just started going through the roof, and sure enough, Moderna had the successful phase 1 trial.
Phase 2? They're going
phase 2, sorry, they're going into phase 3 now. Yeah, and now the market looks like it's set to explode today. I saw Goldman Sachs had a blowout earnings quarter this morning, which I think helps the bull case. And yeah, Bob, what are you looking at this morning?
Well, I've been trading aftermarket last night and this morning. I mean, I've got Goldman. I've sold off a portion of that. Boeing's up on this big contract they received from the government. Thank you, Donald Trump, for that one, obviously. $23 billion made in the USA. And Boeing Goldman, part of the Dow, obviously gives a big boost to Dow stocks. Apple also won a big lawsuit in Ireland, and that helped its stock. I don't even know if that's why it's up. I mean, you don't even need a reason for Apple to go up. But no, a great day to take profits, up 1,000 over 2 days on the Dow. You don't see that too often. I'm looking to just peel off, continue to do that. Anything we bought on weakness, Stevie Wynn the other day, I made sales in that one. That stock's up about 3 or 4. It's just too easy, which tells me that you got to take some profits. You can't let it ride too much.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great take on it. It's always a tough battle because you look at some of the charts and you look at where their highs were in June, and there's always that mental game where it's like, do I take profits on what's been happening in the last few days, or do I look at a 3-month chart and look at where the market got in early June? And if it gets back to that, not only do a lot of these stocks have a lot more room to run, but could they break through those levels and really get rocking?
Well, that's why you don't sell everything. You know, you just peel off a little. If it comes in, you buy it back. But, you know, stocks like Ford, we talked about this earlier about Robinhood before we were on the air. There's a website you can monitor what Robinhood is doing. It's called what did I tell you it was called? Robintrack.net. And you can see which stocks people are buying. And it's all the cheap stocks, which we know already. But there's some good ones sprinkled in also. But Ford and GE are like two of the biggest ones. Ford is up today. GE is up today. It's a good opportunity to make sales in names that haven't moved if you own them and get into stronger stocks. That's what this market is able to do for you today. Bad stocks you can possibly get out at levels that you didn't think you'd see a week ago.
So you're basically saying you almost look at this as an opportunity to do your own personal rotation, and own personal analysis of your portfolio and get out of names that might not be that strong because you can get into names that are strong.
Right. And, you know, there's definitely a rotation going out of tech into more general names, at least short term.
Isn't that healthy for the market?
I think it is healthy.
Yeah.
Really. But it's long in coming, and some of these stocks can come down quite a bit before you would say I'm comfortable with the valuations.
You're talking about tech stocks.
Yeah, and mainly the stay-at-home stocks, because if there really is a vaccine that's going to be coming out, and people can see that at the end of the tunnel, the light there. They're going to sell off these stocks, even if it's another 6 to 9 months. If they absolutely could see the end of this, you will not see Zoom trading in the 200s.
No way.
It's not going to happen.
I'm still waiting on some big security breach with that company. I can't stand Zoom. I don't even like using them.
But I'm just using Zoom as an example. There's so many names that are, as they say, stay-at-home stocks that will sell off dramatically.
Peloton is a great example because when you look at that, they've run up so much. I think it's still great long-term and can go up more, but it's got to let out some wind a little. And
I sold my entire position.
Yeah, that's smart. I'm not in that anymore either.
It was one of the things, just kind of like what Dad was just saying. When I look at what names I'm trying to have for my life, Peloton has never fallen into that. It was always a stock that I was swing trading throughout the pandemic, and it worked out great. But when I was just looking over the last couple of weeks at names that I just didn't really have a long-term interest in being in, Peloton was the top of my list.
Yeah, that's the end of the day, people are I think if anything, when you think about that too, you bring up, if you want to pull up Planet Fitness, I was bullish on them way before the pandemic. When you think of a good value play, if you want to get into that sector, I think that's a great stock to look at right now, because clearly we're going to be getting these things back open. And I think that they're
the symbol, Mike. What's the symbol on?
Let me pull it up. Hold on.
I got it right here.
Some people like to do pair trades, which basically means buying one and selling another in the same category.
Yeah. And what Dan just talked about with Peloton, I think when you look at Planet Fitness, that could be a good buy after selling a Peloton.
Yeah, but it also could be you short a Peloton and you buy a Planet Fitness or a stock like Planet Fitness, and you may make money on both ends of that, but it's a little riskier.
And you see Planet Fitness is obviously up huge pre-market because of the Moderna news. But at the end of the day, like Dan was just saying, at some point there will be a vaccine. And, this is a huge winner from that. So they've been beaten down with the stay at home until people are not staying at home. And then these guys were off to the races. I think they were up to some phenomenal things in the sector. When you look at the everyday person going to the gym, the mentality of let's provide donuts and pizza, genius, because most people are like that. They get a workout in and they're eating pizza. I'm one of those people. And so is most of the Planet Fitness. So,
and to a certain extent, the banks, which a lot of the earnings came out yesterday, Citibank, JP Morgan, Wells, and they were, other than JP Morgan, there was nothing really exciting about the earnings. If anything, people were disappointed with Wells, the way they cut the dividend so hard. But a stay-at-home stock, you could say the banks will do well with that. They're going to get back their buyback eventually. They'll be able to raise the dividends, and they won't have as many loan losses. So that's another way to play it. And these stocks are on everybody's metrics. When you listen to the so-called experts, they all think that these stocks are fairly cheap.
You got to think that if you're a long-term investor and you're looking at a 20 to 30 year, just lifelong portfolio window, a stock like Wells Fargo is extremely cheap. Just one day you're going to look back at these levels and be like, damn, what happened in 2020 where Wells Fargo was down in the low 20s? Seems like it's going to be in there.
Morgan is still the monster in the group. I mean, you got to.
Yeah, where are they trading today? Because I've been waiting to get back in a bank stock. I've been trading in and out of JPM pretty well the last couple of years. I never like holding it long term.
They're looking like they're going to get above 100, which has been kind of interesting levels for JP Morgan because it's been having a tough time really breaking through 100, which kind of brings me to my next point, which is how much do you look at the highs that we saw in June with individual names or just the Dow and S&P in general? Like the S&P is really knocking on the door. Like the high at the beginning of June was 32.33, and it looks like it wants to open at 32.26. So it's literally right there. Are you looking at that as a major level of resistance where it needs to break through that to continue its journey. And right now, maybe we're back to the top of the range that we're in. And if it hits that and gets rejected, it can really get rejected hard.
I mean, I think there's definitely some of that goes on. I mean, there's no doubt that people put sell orders at these levels. But again, the S&Ps are a group of 500 names. And I would bet if you looked at those 500 names, they've completely shifted from what were highs in, 6 months ago. And the stocks that are highs now in that group.
They're talking about putting Tesla in the S&P now.
But you still, when you look at the stocks that make up most of that sector, most of them still have that June 8th day as a day that really marks the high in the stock, and which is the same as the S&P. And like, for example, I know we've talked about USFD a lot. They look like they're possibly trying to break out. I mean, this is the highest I've seen them since they've come down, where they look like they want to open and maybe try and get to that 21 range. But when you pull up their chart, which I'll do right now, I think they touched 28 on that June 8th day. And I mean, does that basically mean, if you look at it like that, yeah, right here, they got up to not 28, but 26.62 on June 8th, which was really the high of the rally before this correction happened for a lot of stocks. So is that kind of a level where if the S&P in general is breaking through its levels from that date, this stock you would think should kind of follow suit, or are they just kind of individual stories?
I think they're all individual stories within the S&P. Obviously, the S&P gets pulled up and down because there's index players, and every name has to be involved. So you're going to have some of that. But, I mean, every stock is on its own at the end of the day. I mean, I'm looking at this chart. It doesn't look like it's going too far.
I got out of USFD. I'm done with that.
I mean, 21 and a half seems to be, somewhere around there, 21 and a quarter, a half.
The whole restaurant supply industry, I'm not really a fan right now. I don't think that's the best business.
I'm giving this stock like maybe another week to figure something out, and then
it was dead weight. I've already put that money to work way better. I'm done just holding on.
Does this company do used equipment or just new equipment?
I think they mainly are food suppliers for more mom and pop style restaurants.
It's just, I don't even see, even with things coming back, I think there's going to be so many victims of this that are already we've seen closed. I just don't like it. I'm not a fan of this at all. I'm kind of annoyed I ever bought it, but hey, can't win them all.
That's some connection issues.
This, speaking of stocks that have not come back to those high levels of that day, Sabre, you're getting a big pop today because of the airlines. That might be another one to, get out of and look for better stocks to be in.
I got out of that over $8. I'm done with Sabre.
And you might see over 8 today, but
I got in Booking with you, Dad. I like that one way more.
It's a great story. I really like Booking.
I'll tell you a name that's kind of on my radar, where if I was day trading today, this would be a stock I'd be all over, is Dave & Buster's. I'm not saying I'd be buying it or shorting it. It just depends what the chart gives me. But when you look at this, just the 1 day chart, I mean, this stock looks like if it breaks through 13 and a quarter, it could really break out for the day. And if it doesn't, it could be a great short, just depending on what the market does in general. This would be a stock I'd be all over today.
Play.
Yeah, it's that kind of move, huh?
Yeah, and if you look at like recovery names, if this stock, right now it's almost priced like it's going to be completely extinct. And if you look at some names that are going to get back to life if there is a vaccine, and we could have a whole show just talking about the results of the vaccine, whether or not it's serious enough to justify the pop in the market, which is probably.
It seems like it is.
Well, the fact that they're going to enter stage 3 and they had 100% of the people that were in this phase 2 study show that they have antibodies from this thing.
I think this thing was just staged to just be announced when it was. I think this already was happening. So I heard that yesterday when Dan's like the Moderna news. I was cracking up to myself. So I'm like, oh, so the timeline is just kind of being expedited a little. And then you heard yesterday the CDC, oh, we'll have this whole virus under control if the U.S. wears masks for the next 4 to 8 weeks. It's like, come on. Well, I think it sums up what I'm getting at. Penn and DraftKings. I think for anyone that hasn't been in those stocks, this is a great time to get in because sports are coming back. They're not going to stop after they do come back. These athletes are not going to get sick. The ones that do will probably be not playing, but they're going to keep playing. And that's where, you know, I know, Dan, me and you have been annoyed with where these have been trading last few weeks, but I'd like to think this is the beginning of a nice run for them both.
Yeah, I mean, look, Penn has been acting way better. It seems like Monday tried to really figure something out, and then it looked like it was going to go right back down Tuesday, but quickly bounced back. And pre-market, I love it right now. I mean, if that stock can get above 31 today, that would be amazing.
We might be off to the races.
We might be off to the races. And then also, Dad, I know we were talking about DraftKings yesterday, but like you said, this stock dipped below 30 just during the session and immediately popped up. And it yet has closed below 30 since it's gotten above 30. So I don't know how much weight you put on where stocks close versus if they just get into that range during the session. But you were telling me yesterday you thought it was a good sign that as soon as they jumped below 30, they immediately popped back above and then closed above 30. And now it looks like maybe DraftKings can get back into gear here. I mean, they have had a massive sell-off. It's been really frustrating to be a part of this name during it.
I think because of the whole unknowns with the resurgence. That's what this has been around. What we talked about this 3 weeks ago, and I didn't even go off my own advice when I was like, it's time to short gaming. It was because of that. And then, you know, it dipped and I was like, oh, this has dipped enough. And it clearly hadn't. And that's what that news was off of, strictly.
And DraftKings announced a standalone mobile app,
which is phenomenal.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I saw that, and 2 months ago they were releasing a press release day after day with news that was way lighter than this, and every time they would release anything, their stock would go up another 6%. And you know, this news I think came out yesterday.
Right.
It came out yesterday, like before the stock was really doing much, and it didn't even really seem to care. I just thought that was kind of funny.
I have to admit with DraftKings, that was one that I got the FOMO effect with and had to just jump on eventually because I got in early and then sold it and then kept seeing it go up. And finally, I'm just like, I can't be waiting and waiting and waiting with a company that I've used many times in the past. And I'm sure will again during NFL season. So, I mean, who doesn't actually love doing that?
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting this weekend to see how much is going on with this golf tournament now that Tiger Woods is in it.
A ton. Everyone wants to be gambling. Everyone wants action.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because if you look at where they gapped up, it was like towards the end of May. And at that time, they opened right around 28.5. And they really went in a straight line all the way up to about 44. And since then, it's basically just been filling in the entire gap. And then what happened yesterday was it fell right back to the levels where it gapped up for literally like seconds and then immediately popped right back up. And clearly, to me, that's just a good sign that there's at least some support built in for DraftKings at that high 20s, 30-ish level. And if that's the case, I love it. I was also looking at just the 1 year chart of it and the indicators with the RSI and the MACD. And I mean, this stock is as oversold as it gets. And if you just kind of look at the 1 year chart with that, it looks like not only is the moving average starting to turn in the right direction, but it's tough to imagine that the RSI goes much lower, which is relative strength index. It just shows that the stock, you know, people got sick of it. It got all the way up to almost 90, and then it came all the way down to almost, you know, below 40, which is a massive change. And now it's definitely in that lower half range where you could see it really popping huge from here. I kind of expect it.
Dan, pull up Ericsson. I know I've been big on that. I have owned it now for a couple of weeks. It's gone on a nice run. I really think this is something people should be strongly considering jumping on the bandwagon.
Well, they have their earnings, I think, tomorrow.
Yep.
Right?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's Friday.
True. Well, yeah, it's this week.
So that'll probably be pre-market Friday. So that'll
yeah,
be
I think this is just that narrative is not going anywhere except in their favor ongoing here. And I would jump on this going into earnings. I really like what they're doing, and they were set up strong before the whole China security problem in Europe. And I really am convinced there's a strong likelihood that they get acquired by Cisco or another huge behemoth here to anchor us against China and have more market share in Europe with 5G. I just think when you look at the world power formation and strategy for the US, this is as good as it gets, and they fly under the radar with Nokia. Over and over again, you read all these articles, Nokia is brought up and Ericsson's not, and it makes me like these guys even more. They seem like they're kind of not being paid attention to, and they should be.
I mean, I would say to an extent they're definitely paying attention to. They have a massive valuation.
I'm talking about in the media, Dan. Like no one's really talking about.
Yeah, but don't forget this is a European stock, and it's well known.
It's well known, but it almost seems like they're not being headlined the way Nokia is because of the Hawaii situation. And this seems to me like the prime winner here when you really look at what they've been up to. I love it. I'm long 1,100 shares, so it's so far so good.
Yeah,
nice.
It looks good on the chart. It made a new high when? Yesterday?
It's going to break 10. I mean, I'm telling you, this thing it's going high. Like we have I don't see how the next few years Ericsson is not a great stock to own. Even whether Trump's reelected or not, it's going to be the same exact situation with the leadership in our country with 5G and security. So that's where I don't see that being a what if, depending on who's leading. It's not like a marijuana situation. This is security in our world. And when you look at how we can have a power dynamic and make sure we're keeping up with China with 5G, it would make sense to roll these guys up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the analysts. There's a lot of upgrades that have taken place in this thing recently. Like Raymond James in March.
I hate hearing analysts on my side with anything, but
Speaking of analysts, you mentioned Harley Davidson.
I got out of that. I made a quick buck on that one.
But there's actually been 5 upgrades in that name
since they heard me bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dad, remember we were talking about that Tupperware company, TUP?
Yeah, I saw what happened yesterday.
The stock's been on a tear. Vaz was texting me about it yesterday, and I was looking at the levels that it would either break out from or possibly go down big, and it ended up plowing through all of them.
This is interesting because I guess, but it's one of those things. Are people, when things open back up, are you going to see that many more people staying in the routines with, leftovers and cooking at home? We've seen obviously delivery is huge.
When we were first looking at this, the big thing we were trying to figure out is what exactly happened in 2018 that just caused it to collapse. Because even in a normal world, I mean, Tupperware is Tupperware. So I know.
I think the convenience era, Dan. I think way more people getting into the world we're in with our sector.
Well, we saw some sort of like accounting fraud investigation that popped up a couple times for them, and that caused their stock to fall off a lot. But I see those reports all the time and never really put much of anything.
I mean, who doesn't have Tupperware? I even have some of that, and I don't even own stuff at all.
This stock got down to what, $1.15 off of all that bad news with the accounting. It was a $70 stock. I have no idea why this thing is acting as well as it is, other than.
So is this a good short candidate?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but
its lows were $1.20 in March, which is insane. It's the key with the whole shorts is just waiting for the momentum to switch. The last thing you want to try and do is short a stock like this when it's just popping day after day.
Yeah, rocket ship.
Yeah, but as soon as it loses that and I don't know, maybe the story here is for real. I find it hard to believe that it would come down that much if there weren't significant issues, and they probably have things going out with their shares getting reclassified where, you know, a lot of investors are probably just turning their heads and playing it on the volume. But I don't want to say it reminds me of like a Hertz situation because I don't know anything about it, but that is just something I could think of. Like there's a lot of names that the stocks have been beaten down for reasons outside of what happened in March, and then they've gone up 400 or 500% for no other reason than just their stocks that are under $10. So they attract.
Pull up Sony.
Sony, no baloney.
I've been having my eye on them lately.
What's the symbol there? Is that
SNE?
NE?
SNE. I used to trade Sony back in the day.
Yeah. What do you think of this chart here, Dad?
I mean, they've broken out.
Yeah, I mean, it's an all-time high.
So, yeah, and can you highlight that, though? Just I know we talked about that like a month ago, just because it's at an all-time high. What do you look at for a stock to then break out to a next level once it's broken through?
Well, I mean, once it hits an all-time high, it's in no man's land to a certain extent. It depends how big the base was coming into it. I mean, there's a lot of factors, but, you know, I don't know what the fundamentals are for Sony right now.
I think they have a new gaming console coming out, I believe.
Yeah.
A new PlayStation.
I'm waiting for Vaz to text me because I know he's watching right now, and he owns a lot of Sony, and I'm sure he's got some.
I've been thinking about getting in it. I think like they've been kind of gearing up, it seems like, for the next push.
Yeah, I mean, the chart, you can't argue with the chart. It's you know,
PS4.
Well, I mean, that speaks for itself.
PS5 too, which just got released. I mean, they're all over the PlayStation.
I mean, if you look at the
that probably the most successful gaming console in history when you think about it.
Yeah,
probably 100%. I would agree with that. Yeah, and they've
so that just is so powerful when you look at online gaming and the synergies now with what they've been able to do. I think this thing is set up for, obviously it's a behemoth of a company. Everyone knows who Sony is, but I think their new devices are going to be dominant, and more people now are on the online gaming. Where we're heading with online gambling with gaming and Twitch and all these new gadgets that are out and about for accessibility, I think that helps Sony a ton.
Vaz just told me that Sony also invested $250 million in the Fortnite gaming this morning.
That's what got my attention, right? What Vaz just highlighted, the Fortnite.
Is that
right now?
Is that Epic Gaming or something? Is that what it's called?
No, Fortnite is just like the biggest game right now out there. Like, I'm not a gamer.
Doesn't Epic own it? Is that the name of the company?
I don't know who owns it, but they own Fortnite is the game. It's like the Pokemon of this era.
I mean, the only thing I would say about Sony is it made
Epic Games owns it.
I mean, from a technical point of view, it made a new high. It's retracing, trying to get back to the old resistance.
So would you wait for a pullback, Dad?
Well, if you really like the company, you buy a little bit here and you wait for the pullback to about 72 3/4 if it gets there. And, you know, then I would be more comfortable owning it.
What I like even more right now is Walmart. I really love what they've done recently. And I think that is like with healthcare and delivery. And even I know I brought up to you guys, Dan, yesterday with the movie theater, how they're turning their parking lots now into drive-in movie theaters, which offline we'll talk about for our business. I'm thinking there's major synergies there. But these guys have hit on every cylinder. I want to meet their execs. I talk about a job well done on another level the last few years.
If you have balls, the trade to do, we talked about pairs earlier, buy Walmart and sell Amazon.
I love where your head's at with that, actually. I'm up so much on Amazon. I'm actually thinking about getting out of Amazon just short term.
Look, the last thing you want to do is sell Amazon, but I don't want to say before earnings. I love the idea of selling Amazon the day of earnings, but I could really imagine that stock trending up because people are going to want to pile in.
I agree with you, Dan.
Earnings. You sell Amazon the day they do the earnings, before they do the earnings. That's my plan,
actually. I'm going to be doing that.
That's the plan with Amazon, but only if Nasdaq shows that it wants to turn around. I mean, Amazon kind of sold off a little, and we got the show right now. So stock picks of the day. I'm gonna start and say that again, depending on what the chart gives me, I think this Dave and Buster's is interesting either for a short or a long. Depends. Like right now, if it wants to go down below 12.75, I would probably short it. But in saying that, if it wants to break above 13.25, I'd probably be on the long side. So I don't really care which direction I play. It's just more of where the momentum takes it. And I kind of think that you'll see some sort of sell-off at the open here. Whether or not it consolidates and goes back higher is another story. But you don't see a market open this high without some sort of giving and taking, in my opinion. So
Dan's playing. What are you liking?
Well, I'm still playing plug, and I just shorted some at 9. I got another order out there at 9:30. It's been good to me, so I'm going to stick with that. And in addition, I'm peeling off names that I own. A little bit of Goldman, Boeing. The only one that I'm not peeling off is Apple, because I looked at the options and they weren't expensive enough to make an option sell. But it's a good opportunity to make sales and look for lower levels to get in. I'm going
to be adding to my DraftKings position this morning, buying into the momentum today of this news. I'm, down big on the stock. I own a lot of it, but I'm going to own more and get my average price point down a bit. And
the one thing I'll say about DraftKings, Mike, is the thing that sucks about that stock is it takes up your margin requirements are 100% on DraftKings, which most stocks it's about 20%. So if you're using margin as a method of trading, it completely just takes all of your margin, which I learned the hard way.
I'm more looking at the position I had as a swing trade, where I'm gonna just get in and out on momentum.
For sure. And before we close this, someone just commented and asked, are you guys watching Moderna? The answer is yes. I'd be selling the stock on the news. There's so much insider selling in that stock. God forbid there's a report that comes out that it's not as good as it looks. That stock is falling off a cliff. I think you play the reopening of the economy, not Moderna. That's my opinion. It's tough to ride a name that's gone this high. I'm not even looking at the stock right now, but I imagine it's up big pre-market, and it's gone on a massive.
Guys, you got to get out of here.
You got to pay attention to the inside selling. All right, bye guys.
Yeah.